Hello everybody, it's Claire from Rzain Consulting. Today I'm with Chen from Story Giant Games. We dive into the world of game design and business strategy. We are speaking about industry insight, effective monetization, game balance, early feedback, and also social feature. Don't forget to subscribe. I hope you enjoy. Hello, everybody. I'm with one of the core members of Puzzle Society / the renamed Rzain Society, Chen. Chen, welcome on board. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's an honor, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Hey, same here. I think you've been one of the first to join the society and the project. And then we met, I think it was in London
Yeah.
this year. And you are an absolutely genius. When I think about a gaming entrepreneur, I'm thinking about you, your team, your studio. And I'm super excited to ask you questions. So today we are going to speak about the intersection of game design and business, exploring how game design principle can drive successful business strategy in the gaming industry. How does it sound like?
Yeah, it's like a mouthful.
Definitely. I tried to do a longer sentence, but it didn't work. uh, so, Chen, can you tell us a bit more about yourself, your experience? You've been around for a while, so tell us everything.
When I was a kid, I was like most people in the industry in love with games. Never realized I could make that a profession. So when I first studied industrial design. That didn't really work out. And during that time, I found a new university that offered a game design course. So I took that. And around 20 years ago, I graduated and immediately found myself a first job as a game designer, working at a local studio here in the Netherlands. PlayStation 2 games, Xbox games back then. So that was really cool. And from there, I moved into different kind of studios. And now I am a game director at Story Giant Games. We're working on a game called Text Express. I oversee all the game design decisions, as well as help out with the strategy part in the studio, the business part. And of course, where this talk is about, I think what I really like to do is look at the business opportunities, the risks, everything involved with the business side of games, and how we can then adapt games to that situation to make the best out of it.
100%, and it's massive, like from just playing a game, that understanding that you can actually make money from it. I'm super curious because I just started to actually try to do the game with a team actually smarter than me, but how do you as a game designer see monetization? Like, is it what are the key game design principles that are effective that any game designer should think about when he's thinking, I want to do games, but I also want to monetize?
Yeah, of course. So there's different ways of looking at it, and I think we'll just have to cover a couple. But what I lately like to look at is how to provide value to the player, and that is a fact I think happens in all games. And of course, I'm currently working on free-to-play games, so we'll talk about that a lot today. But for instance, where I also really recognize the value creation part is with Nintendo. So if you look at Nintendo games and how they are made, how they're like expertly crafted, and how they in every step try to create that fun and valuable moments for the player, you can really feel that in all of their products. Even if they're premium products, you can just feel how they think about that whole process. So that's how I like to look at monetization. Is also that it's not about just throwing in more walls that the player just can buy away so they can continue their game. It's actually how can you add more value that the player wants to unlock, and then provide ways of doing that. That can be monetization, but it can also be rewards. So
Nice. Do you have an example on a game where you thought about the user and basically you designed something and you just created value?
yeah, well, if you look at value, there's always different ways of what the player finds the most valuable. But and this also ties into, for instance, setting the price of in-app purchases. Is how does the player relate to what the price is, and when is it the right price, right? So, for instance, if you look at time investment as a resource the player is actually putting into the game as a measurement of, okay, so the player watches an ad for 30 seconds, but what did it do before reaching that point, right? Did it spend 10 seconds on a level, or did it spend 3 minutes on a level? And when does that feel like a fair offer, for instance, to double the coins or whatever, right? And then always try to relate it in terms of how the player experience the game. And then looking at value.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, and then looking at how you can create value, there's different ways, but it's always good to know what the player really likes about the game, right? And that changes per game. But a lot of the overlap, I think, in all games is in progress. So when the actual fun is either you are learning the new mechanics or you're learning how to play the game. That is a lot of fun. And then the progress is more internal, or the progress is in story or in unlocking beautiful items, or there's always some progress that the player wants to achieve, right? And there's a lot of value in that want, right? The player wants something, and then there's the value hidden, right? And then you can adapt that per game.
Yeah, and I think this is really not enough seen, like basically the progression and all the user journey. And without this, you won't have any monetary values. Like I had several example of games. It was too hard at the beginning, then the user just churned. So at the end of the day, you are doing $0. That's where I think game design is so important. So actually, it leads me to my next question. How do you balance the challenge in level design? What is your thing, to make it as balanced, as good in the balancing that you can, especially in the early experience?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and there's like before data comes in and after data comes in, right? So after data comes in is actually the easier part, right? Because then you have player data, then you can look at it saying, okay, this level we see players dropping a lot, that level players are staying, and then you can make a more educated guess. The data won't tell you why they are, but you can play it yourself and then get a sense. Oh, maybe it's too difficult. Maybe we're not introducing enough fun. But before data comes in, then you have to go either on intuition or play a lot of your competitor games, right? Nowadays, most games have games that they're referencing. And if they're successful, then it's good to pay attention on what they're doing, right? And usually it's very nuanced, right? The apparent things are usually not what it's about. So if you're playing your competitors, really play it as a free player, right? Get deep into the game, then maybe spend some money on it, see how that changes the whole thing, right? And then you can get a sense of how your competitors do it, and then I can't tell this game designers enough. Play your own game all the time, and then really analyze how you feel while you're playing it. What are the moments that you're like, okay, now I'm doing my job rather than enjoying the game, right? That there's a moment where like, I want to just not play now, right? And okay, the player's going to have that same moment, same realization. What triggers that moment? What can you change to make sure that you as a designer want to continue? That probably helps you think about your players as well. So that's how I usually go about doing that.
I think it's really wise. And if we take, for instance, a puzzle example, how is it done usually? Like, for instance, Royal Match is a game that is making a crazy amount of money. So, is it like a simple learning curve where basically you win all your level and then they make you pay? Or is it like the opposite? Is they make it super hard so people they want to stay?
Yeah, I'm not a match-free specialist in any case, but my sense is what they are doing is balancing the game per player. So they are changing the level in subtle ways, and you can easily change the layout of a level. So the starting position will always be the same. So you have the idea the level is the same, but whatever blocks come later, right? Those are random, but they're not random. They're like handpicked, right? They're designed to make the game easier or harder. And I think they'll use the player's own behavior. Like, okay, this player spent a lot of boosters, maybe make the next level harder or easier. Like, I don't know how that works specifically, but I think that's what's happening. Or otherwise, if it's not, then they should. But they're making a ton of money, of course. So I'm not pretending that I know better or how to make more money at all. But I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
that's how they do it.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. Like at the end of the day, how to understand such a wide, different, sample of audience is insane. At the end of the day, how do you find similarities on people that are so different? It's psychology at the end of the day.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, and what all the top games like all the top games that I've seen that are making a lot of money in the casual space, they are super polished, right? So they like everything looks great, everything animates great, their animations are awesome, the frame rate is like super smooth, like. And those are just like the basics right now. You like, and that's already pretty hard to achieve for a lot of teams to get that level of polish. But that's just the start, right?
yes.
What Royal Match, of course, perfected, and I think Gardenscapes kind of introduced, or Playrix at least, is those mini games that they use in the ads, like to have those appear back into the game, right? I think Royal Match kind of perfected that formula where they constantly play around with the actual game mechanic. So the water puzzles and all those puzzles that they introduced, you will always see the main match-free mechanic come back in different ways. So they show you all these cool ways that you can play that actual game, right? So they're no longer fake ads. You have all those mini games really there for the player to unlock and play with, or skip if they don't like it. But I think they really perfected that formula.
Yes, and I think all of this with data and of course user-centric strategy. So actually, it leads me to my next question. Um, how do you treat user feedback in game design? How do you gather even feedback, and when you should gather feedback?
Yeah. So as early as possible, I would say. So for Text Express, we really took that to our heart, and we placed the first playable that we made internally already immediately online, immediately in the US. We tested it, so no technical Philippines test. Just this is going to be our main audience. We knew that from the start. Because we're making an English word game, US will be the number one target. So we tested right there after 3 weeks, right? So the first version we had took 3 weeks. And then from that moment, the game was live. So we really gathered feedback immediately. So you can't get too early, I think. I do think what we got out of those early builds wasn't super useful because this was the first time we did it like this, and the game wasn't really polished. And I think we had like day one retention of 19%, but it was just a few weeks of work. But we knew like 19% is not going to be enough. And if we're just going to continue, how useful is that data if you're not willing to then change your approach? And we really believed in this project, so we kept pushing it until it was high enough. But yeah, you can be soon enough. And then there's all these different approaches on how to get user data. right? You can just look at the data that you're collecting through in-game metrics. You can always ask players. There are services that are also really helpful, especially on the UI and user experience side. Like, is a game intuitive? Does a player understand everything that they're facing? There's a lot of knowledge you can get there. You won't hear from them if what will make the game more fun necessarily, especially if it's early. But you will get all the user experience data. And then later, of course, questionnaires. Like, you can do in-game stuff. Like, I really like the Space Ape approach, where they immediately ask 3 questions before you even playing the game. Like, they already, I felt, okay, I'm already being segmented based on my answer, so I'll get another experience than maybe you or someone older. So I was like, that's interesting. So yeah, all possibilities.
I love this, and I love also this example of space app of segmentation, not only at the end of the game design, because I suppose all of this also is useful for the push notification, the marketing engagement, and so on.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant, to be honest. So now let's speak about data. We spoke a bit about data analytics, and it's always a topic that is coming up. So how do you integrate data analytics in game design, in your game design process, to optimize both your player experience and business experience?
Yeah. So one of the things we try to do, and we don't always do it rigorously enough, but is to set a KPI goal for the design. So we want to, I don't know, increase our organic users, right? So we want to make sure our organics are increased. So we're thinking of how can players share the game, how would that work, and then what will we be measuring? Well, it will be our organic uplift, right, or K factor, whatever you want to call it. And then we set a goal, like we want this to be 5% higher, 10% higher, double, whatever the value is. We set it, and then we'll try to develop the feature and then try to measure it afterwards. I think that is a really nice approach, because it will also really help you clearly identify how to think about the feature you're making, right? It just sets a real goal that you're trying to achieve, and then everyone reading the documentation can just like, oh, you want to do this? Isn't this a better idea? And then you can have that discussion. Yes, that is maybe a better idea or not. But a lot of game design documentation is just, this is the feature, right? This is how you share stuff. But okay, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, because I don't know what the goal of the feature is, right? What are you trying to achieve with the game design? So I would, even if you're making a premium game, that's still good practice, right? You're still achieving something with features and items that you're putting in your game.
100%. And now on the opposite side, on what you should not do on design. And I am personally seeing a lot of weird things out of there, so I think it will be useful. So what do you think are the pitfalls of game design that negatively impact the business outcome, and how we can avoid it?
At least one thing that comes to mind is what a game designer shouldn't do, but this is more towards the team, is not put numbers in their design. So or be vague about what the feature needs to do. Or I see that happening a lot. Like designers are talking in supposed, this is what it's supposed to do, or this is how it becomes really vague. And what happens is the discussion is not held. So the moment I claim something as a designer, so I'm gonna say we're gonna make 5 new characters, and they all have 10 stories, right? And then I know someone is gonna say you're crazy, because this is a amount of time it will cost, and like I will immediately, because I quantified it, someone will get like upset or have an opinion. But if I say, we're just going to introduce a bunch of characters with some story, no one is going to say, that's a good or a bad idea, because you don't really know, and you can't really imagine what I'm thinking, because I keep it vague. So I think a lot of designers do that. They keep it vague to not have the discussion. And I think if you want to maximize your time as a designer and your impact as a designer, quantify it, even if you don't know. So usually it's also like they like you think about a feature and do we need 3 or 4 or 10? I don't know. And we need X amount. I see that also a lot in game design documents. We need X amount of something. Okay, you don't know, right? And that's fine. If you say we need 100, and then there's a discussion, you'll get closer to the actual answer, right? And that's where you need to get to with your team and anyone that's looking at the game design.
Yes, makes total sense. Totally agree. I hope all the designers out of there listened, so we can kind of correct this little pitfall, I will say.
Pitfall, yeah.
So, Chen, I have a question related now to social features. Like a lot of people, are speaking about the Minecraft, Fortnite, and all the PvP games as well, and saying like social game is a new game. So, what do you think as a game designer about social feature?
Well, I think there's still plenty of uncharted territory, but I also think that there are particular players more interested in social features than others. Like we did a survey for Text Express at some point where it became really clear that most of our audience don't really want to interact with other people. This is like their game, their time. Like I want to be in this world by myself, please, and don't bother me with other people, right? So that's really interesting. Would that be like it might still be a good idea, but not for the people that we had the questionnaire for, right? It might still be a good idea, but there's definitely different audiences. Having said that, I do think that social items in games provide a lot of opportunity for monetization, for longer and better engagement. People befriend other people, so it becomes their thing to do with each other, right? There's quite a lot, and we're all seeking more time from our players, right? We want them all to be engaged with the game and interact. If there's customization and you can show it to someone else, that's like even better, right? Because it's not only for yourself, but it's now also for your group. Or like look at how my character looks. Wow, how did you get that? I want that as well. Let's team up, all dressed the same, for instance, or all dressed differently. So there's a lot of upside to having social features, but it's not for everyone. So.
Agreed and totally aligned. I think even like for some audiences, like silver economy, silver audience, it may be I don't want to scam to speak to me. Like it's just leave me alone.
Leave me playing my game, and that's for some people that, or actually for a lot of people, I think games is like a way to escape your daily busy stuff. So anything that reminds you of your daily life might be annoying and not what they're looking for.
Yes, Chen, it was an absolute pleasure to have you with us. We reached the end of our questions. So, do you have any last tips or insight to share to the audience?
Yeah, so actually, for your first question, I had some other things that I wanted to talk about. So let's talk about that. I've written them down. For instance, a part where we didn't touch on is like what makes a good, or what I'm looking for a puzzle game. What would be a good puzzle game for the market? And I think what I would look for in like when I'm looking at specific puzzles. I want the puzzle to be super intuitive, right? So match-3 is super intuitive. Merge is pretty intuitive, slightly less so than match-3, but still very much. And they're like word games are pretty intuitive. People get them quickly. Again, word games not as accessible as match-3, right? Match-3 is still, I think, the crown jewel there. but they're like the simple rules as making it super accessible. So intuitive, that they need to be intuitive. They also need to be very tactile, and when I'm playing with it, that I feel like I'm the one in control of what I'm doing. There are quite a lot of puzzles where the feedback is less immediate. It doesn't feel tactile. It feels there's like delay. So responsiveness is very important. Then I think in general, what makes all games very satisfying if once the output is larger than my input, it's like a general rule I use to make something very satisfying, right? If I just press a button or I just tap the screen, whatever happens need to be way more elaborate than just acknowledging the tap like an app, right? Because that's what apps do. They just have, okay, yes, you pressed the button, so I'm changing colors. But if I press the button and it not only changes colors, but like there's a sparkle and there's like something happening, and that like you can go for this just one button, you can make that the whole thing almost. But if every time I press the button, something really changes, it's like looking at a candle, right? The candle is kind of the same, but also always different. So you're always you can stare at the candle for a very long time. And I think that's the same with interaction. So a bigger output than input. And of course, I think for casual games and puzzle games and free-to-play games in general, you want the core mechanic to offer a lot of room for variation, right? And there's not a lot of puzzles mechanics that stay the same but offer 100 different level types and items that you can use while having the interaction always the same, right? So that's pretty hard to come by, but if it ticks all of those boxes, I think then you have a chance of becoming a really big game.
And it's a perfect sum up, I think, on what will make a game successful and monetize. Totally aligned. Chen, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being with
Likewise.
us. And I hope you will come back because it was an amazing episode. And take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye. Oh, you made it to the end. Congratulations. This podcast takes a lot of effort and energy. If you want to support, follow us on LinkedIn and share it with your friends. Take care. Bye bye. See you soon in Rzain Society.